Another Hinderer video. This is the XM-18 3.5 inch. I've also done a review on its little brother, the XM-18 3-inch model. Quick size comparison for you. Both great knives. Those of you that aren't familiar with Rick Hinderer, he is a former firefighter EMT, lives up in Northeast Ohio, makes knives out of his shop up there, and they are considered by a lot of people one of the grail knives people want to get. The three big knives people want to get: Hinderers, Striders, and Sebenzas. And so when people can finally fathom the idea of spending this much money on a knife, especially if they're finding it on the secondary market, some people will jump at the chance, crazy as that is. Rick has a deal where if you are a first responder, firefighter, EMS, military, you can get these knives directly from him. Everyone else is kind of forced onto the secondary market where the prices can be quite exorbitant. $500, $600, $700, $800. It's really kind of insane. Rick's price on these is, I think, $385, which is still expensive, but again, you get a lot of knife for that money, and if you're into that realm of knives, it might be worth spending it for you. I tried to talk myself out of getting this knife back before I got this. I got a zero tolerance 566, and I took this and I did a direct comparison. I handled both of them. I had a friend who had one of these, and I said, boy, I don't need this knife because this 566 is 90% of this knife, and it's half the price, and I don't need to spend this much money on a knife to, but, well, you see where that line of thinking went. Really, though, you know, if you want to get the Hinderer or the Grail knife, pick it up. But one of the other ZT collaborations, Rick has done a lot of collaborations with Zero Tolerance. Just as a sort of lineage, you can see here. Here's the Kershaw Cryo, designed by Rick, $30 knife. The ZT 566, what's this, $150, I forget the price on this one. And then up into the XM-18. And they've all got a lot of the same features. But for those of you that want the end-all, be-all of sorts, the XM-18 may be where it's at. Rick designed these knives as a hard-use knife. Again, he was a firefighter EMT, and they were designed for first responders. And so they are designed extra tough with that in mind. They're not going to be a dainty knife. They're not great slicers. They're not going to be as nice as a slicer as something with a nice, finely honed blade, finely trimmed blade like a Spyderco here, like this Paramilitary 2, which is a great slicer. This knife, it's not that great of a slicer, but again, it's a hard-use knife, and for what it's intended for, it does a fantastic job. So let's have a look at it. This knife is actually one of the triple-aught design knives. Rick did some knives for them. They put their logo on it. You can see the triple-aught design there, and it makes it just a little bit more expensive because of that sort of, not really collaboration, but they put their logo on it. The triple-aught design knives come with these black scales. They're not bad. They're definitely slipperier than the standard G10. They've got the fullers here. I took them off. You can get a bunch of different scales from Rick. This is the black blue, which is very popular. It's a great look. These seem to always be sold out on his website. I've also have the orange, and in the 3-inch, here is the brown or flat dark earth or whatever color it's called. But lots of great options. They're easy to swap out for the most part with this pivot screw, which I'll get to in a little bit. One of the other things that Rick does that you can further customize your knife, you're already spending a bunch of money on the knife as it is. If you want to further customize it, you can get anodized screws here. They come in both the blue and the copper, both those screws, and then also the standoffs. Here's one of the standoffs here. I have it back there that I had taken it out from. And again, they just add just a little bit more customized look to this knife. It is a production knife, but it's a high-end production knife. He also has anodized pivot screws, but these things are hard to get. They're almost as hard to get, not quite as hard as the knives, but he'll have them for sale on his website. They'll go up and they'll all be gone within a half hour or so, so I've not yet been able to get the pivot screws. Same with some of the hardware, like the pocket clip. I've seen anodized versions of this, although I haven't seen any recently, but if you can get them, that'll again make your knife just a little bit that much more custom. Up here there is a nice big lanyard hole for those of you that are lanyard types. On the lock side here, titanium lock bar, frame lock here. The pocket clip has sort of this spoon-shaped scoopy design, and it's really nice pocket clip. It has just the right amount of tension on it. Because this is nice and smooth, there are no underclip issues, so it slides in and out of your pocket. No problem, nice and easy. It's reversible, tip up, tip down, and he has these little fillers that he makes here that fill in that space for a little bit nicer finish to it. It's not a really deep carry pocket clip, but again, Rick was EMS, and probably this was partially designed with them in mind, that if some of it's sticking out of your pocket, you'll be able to grab it a little bit easier. Other stuff on the back here, he has the lock bar stabilizer, which is right here, and when the knife is open, when you go to close it, that prevents you from over moving the lock bar. The lock, while we're here, get the lock up in just its natural state. There's the lockup. This doesn't have, some of the trend these days seems to be going to lock bars that have a steel insert on them. This one does not, it just has the titanium. It moves nice and easy. One of the big things that I noticed when I compared this to the 566 is that this lock bar, again, same design, but it's harder to move. It's thinner. There's not as much in there to get your finger. I'm not sure if it's a function partially of this being steel, but just where you can feel some of the extra fit and finish on the XMs, I thought when I first played with this, wow, that just moves over so nice and smooth. It's so easy to get in there. There's a lot more purchase for your thumb in there, and it closes a lot easier. The pivot screw is a proprietary design by Rick. It has a nice flat screw on this side, but on this side it has his proprietary design, which I think is actually kind of frustrating. He says you're supposed to be able to adjust this in the field with ease, which I don't know that that's the case. He sells a spanner tool because you can't, if you try and spin this, this side will spin as well. It's not fixed here like a lot of other knives are, where on one side they have the pivot and on the other side it's kind of locked in, as it is on some of these knives. It's locked in right there, and same on this where it's locked in on that side as well. So you don't have those issues. On this though, it can be a problem where you need to go turn this, because if you don't have a spanner tool, sometimes this can rotate as well. An easy fix, an easy cheap fix, if you have a set of nail clippers, take the handle off. This will actually fit right in here. Acts as sort of a poor man's spanner tool. It's awkward to use, it is admittedly, because you're trying to hold the knife and you're trying to hold this in here while you're trying to screw the other side. So it's not great. It's not as nice as if you bought the real thing, but it's, you know, relatively free. You probably have one sitting around the house. So check that out if you want to not spend all the big money. On this side, he also has his name, Hinderer, typed right up there. This knife is a flipper. This comes in a flipper and a non-flipper. The mechanism of the flipper, it has nylon washers. Interestingly, compared to a lot of the other ZT collaborations he does, this one actually flips the least well. The 566, granted this has a spring bar in it, just flies open, partially because of that spring bar, but some of the newer ones like the 562, which are not assisted, just super fly open. So it's a little bit frustrating when people first get their XMs. You can see the videos, they'll go to open it. I did the same thing when I first got it. You can check out my unboxing video. I've had this knife, I don't know, 6-8 months. And you go to open it and, oh, people are just unexcited because they're not used to the flip. After you get used to it, it'll open up, not a problem. You can even, if you want, throw in a little bit of wrist flick. But once you get used to it, you have to kind of preload it a little bit, and then it opens up just fine. I think Rick has heard the complaints from some people on that. So what he's done on some of the more recent models is he's increased the detent so that you have to overcome a lot more pressure when you're opening it. And then when you finally overcome the detent, it springs open a lot easier. So that's a nice advantage, nice upgrade on some of the more recent models. The Gen 4, some of the other modifications they've made. The thumb studs here, which can be used as thumb studs if you want. I'm not that great at opening this with the thumb stud, so I always use the flipper. But on this one, you can see they're pretty squared off, whereas on the newer models, he's rounded them out some. So they'll be a little bit more comfortable to use. When the blade opens up, those thumb studs go, and locks into that little notch on the frame there, acts as a blade stop, and it's going to provide that much more strength and stability for it. Well, we're back here. There is some jimping, pretty wide jimping. It's not so aggressive that you're going to tear your finger up, but it's just enough that you can get your finger in there and get a nice purchase on it, and your finger, your thumb, is not going to slide down. On the underside, the flipper flips out and makes a nice big finger choil in here that almost locks your finger in there because it creates almost this hook around in here, so there's no chance that your finger is going to go forward down onto that blade. So that works really well. In my hand, I have medium-sized hands, and it is super comfortable. No hot spots. This G10, it's not crazy grippy like some G10 is. It always smooths down anyway. But the G10 that he does, it has a nice comfort level to it. Not crazy, insane, tear your hand or pocket up grippiness. Speaking of that, on the flipper here, there's just enough grip on there so you can get your finger onto it. If you open it 100 times a day, like I did when I first got it, your finger may get a little bit sore, but otherwise, once you get down in there and the knife breaks in, not a big problem. Onto the blade. The blade on this is S35VN. On most of the blades, he actually has that on the back, like this, but because this is the triple aught design, the TAD logo replaces his typical USA and blade steel. Has a stone-washed finish, which is great for wear. And then this is the slicer grind. He also has the Spanto grind here, which has a nice beefy body here and then comes down to a Tanto tip, which is great for prying. The slicer grind is supposed to be a little bit nicer for slicing, but again, not going to be quite as nice as a finely honed blade like these Spydercos, which are great for slicing. For instance, I tried slicing some saran wrap with this once at a class, and it just wouldn't cut it, but I think the Spyderco would have done just fine with it. The blades are big and beefy. Comparing the blade profiles of the Spanto here versus the slicer grind, you can see the Spanto goes down to the tip and then narrows down a little bit. Again, great for getting under and prying things. It's going to be a little bit stronger. But still, these blades are so beefy that it's really not going to be a problem. These are extra hard-used knives. In the pocket, this is not a small knife. It's decent sized. It's not offensively large to carry. Comparing the closed size to the 3-inch. The 3-inch is definitely a lot more pocket friendly. A lot more comfortable thickness wise, weight wise. I mean, this is almost 6 ounces, 5.7, I forget. So it's not horrible, but you're not going to want to wear it with your suit. But again, Rick being EMS, this knife really wasn't designed for the average Joe carrying it around in some flimsy pants. If you're wearing tactical pants, if you're wearing military pants, if you're wearing fire EMS type pants, not going to be a problem, but in thin flimsy pants, it might be a little bit heavy and something to note. Overall thoughts on this knife, it is a fantastic knife. It's not a cheap knife, it's an expensive knife, especially if you are unfortunate enough to have to buy it off the secondary market. If you can get lucky and get one directly from Rick, either through one of his lottery systems at a knife show or on his website when he occasionally sells them, you are fortunate. But if you're going to get one on the secondary market, well, you can decide if that much knife is worth the money for you. It is a great knife. It's super tough. It's going to take anything you throw at it. It does have a little bit of the panache of having the Hinderer, the Grail knife that some people are looking for. If you're into that, I am happy I got one. Admittedly, I carry the smaller one a lot more, but nonetheless, great knife. The Hinderer XM-18 3.5-inch flipper.